Good morning, everybody, or it is good morning in my world. Lady, your watch is late because I am 3 minutes late, but then again, I missed myself yesterday, so that makes almost sense. I hope you're all doing well out there. I got a couple of really interesting questions that we're going to talk about today. Um, yes. We're going to talk a little bit about World War One, prisoners of war working, because that was a question that came up. And as I just noticed, Roger and I are talking about it in the next episode from World War One. I was sort of playing with the idea of having Roger join us today, but unfortunately, or fortunately for him, he is being dined. Thus, someone is feeding him today. So Roger will be with us live next week, and we'll chat a bit more. On sound. Does that mean on sound I need to turn on sound? You have to very quick run. Time machine, go for it. So, World War One prisoners, and we're going to talk about Himmler and Goering wanting to get rid of Ernst Röhm and the SA, because that was an interesting question that I promised to answer as well. Hey, Simon. Simon, I will shoot you an email later because of translation we're working on that I want to copy off for a couple of reasons. And then I want to catch you up on last Nazi secret research, because I spent a whole lot of time yesterday on the phone with some very, very nice archival people. And it sort of became clear to me that the way I've gone about doing FOIA requests should be circumvented by the extensive network and collaboration of staff sergeants who's actually the ones running the world. Because then maybe we can actually get what we want. And I've some very interesting papers coming my way. I found a whole bunch of stuff on HIMMLER, and it's been a little week, a couple of weeks since I did a real last Nazi secret episode, because the next place we have to go is to Austria, is to Linz, Gusen, Bergkristall, Kellerbau, which was the first tunnel system Himmler did, experimented with construction, and then the largest, most extensive one, Bergkristall, where almost 1,000 planes were made. Andrew, are you not trucking about out there? You are, and damn it, thank you, brother. I don't know if you know, but Andrew is one of those people that we cannot live without. And certainly, since he is responsible for about 3,000% of this channel's revenue, I can't. But I'm still going to tell the world what you do, Andrew, because what you do is really, really important to all of us. The man drives a very large truck. And if it wasn't for the truckers of this country, we would not be eating, and anywhere actually, and lots of diesel going through there. But we wouldn't be getting anything anywhere if it wasn't for the thousands and thousands and thousands of guys, and I presume a couple of girls actually, would be pulling all their loads across this country, getting us everything from food to toilet paper. And believe it or not, sometimes I'm at odds. What's the most important thing, food or toilet paper? But I want to thank you, Andrew, and I want to thank all your fellow truckers. I learned how to drive a truck I was taught in the army out in Europe to how to truck and drive a double hanger. And I got to tell you, I'll drive the damn thing forward. I'll sort of get it to where it needs to go. I can parallel park it. But, crystal holy thought. But when I see some of the professional truckers, how they swing those damn things around and park them anywhere, it's just, it's thrilling to see. It's always cool to see experts do what they do in any field, but to see anybody who can really parallel park a double hanger truck, that's impressive. All right, Crystal, I'll bite. Why no need to go to Obama Gao? Um, anyway, well, of course you can. While you were, that's why I had to learn how to drive a truck so I could drive armored vehicles. Um, you're just driving on vacation. Oh, damn. All right. Well, you say 18 wheel. What the hell are you going on vacation with? Um, damn. Anyway, like I said, Bergkristall is a very interesting and very controversial place that I haven't. It was one of the things I set out to do a couple of years ago. William, damn it, you're. Thank you, William. I appreciate it. We are tripling our revenue here on YouTube these days. I'm not entirely sure how we. Thank you. Um, Incidentally, this is my 9th day without coffee, and I'm still semi-conscious. In fact, I had my withdrawals, which is probably why I keep forgetting things last week. Uh, so so instead of coffee, because I figured I wanted to give my body a break and see if I could feel a little better. So now I just drink like 4 rock stars a day and 6 energy drinks. But that's much better, right? This is also much better because it's Diet Dr. Pepper. Anyway, back to Pakistan. Just I had to try. My stomach was refusing to talk to me for a while, and I'm not sure I'm giving up coffee forever, but I think I needed to have a real reset of coffee. And honestly, I feel better, and not. Yeah, I'm not sure the energy drinks are it is not. It was not by design. And honestly, I never did. I never really done any. I never done any drugs. I didn't smoke. I didn't do anything. Um, but I get the addiction of you go to work, you get up in the morning, first thing you do, you make coffee, you sit there, you drink coffee, and it's nice. It's a social thing. Now, oh, my COVID was last year, and I miss that part. I miss the social aspect of having a cup of coffee all alone with myself. Hang on, I'm just trying to move this thing a bit. Let's see, I can look at myself straight. Um, I do miss that part, but yes, there's going to be a couple of weeks of tea, and then we'll see. Don't worry, when I get to Europe and I start filming again, there will be coffee coming. Um, so anyway, let me get back to Bergkristall. When I set out with the last Nazi secret, I had what started the whole question in my mind that there was a lot more going on about World War II research than I had thought, or than we had all been told, was that I kept seeing, as I was researching, as I was reading history, I kept seeing these reports on things that sounded plausible, but wasn't really officially accepted. I saw arguments and amongst historians and officials that constantly was at odds and constantly arguing about things that seemed like reasonable requests. RKB, I don't have any family left. That's you guys. And what I mean by reasonable is like I spent years in the military. I understand the system and secrecy and national security and things like basic concepts of what makes certain things run around, and I get that. But when I see reasonable requests or inquiries that are being shut down by sometimes menial officials in small positions for no particular reason, I start asking questions. And that's how that led me down to the last Nazi secret, possibly that there was actually something there. Then I started looking around at some of these sites that no one could explain, me thinking, well, it was kind of weird that after only 77 years, and in the greatest scheme of things, that's not that much. And there are still people alive that should remember these things, these places. And some of them have made statements, and a lot of statements have come out, like Karl Werner's statement and Jonas Thal. And I just recently, Rudi from Linz sent me a couple of very nice and interesting names about, especially a Polish who became a Polish politician after the war. He was a prisoner in Mauthausen. Mauthausen is the concentration camp that is located right above the Bergkristall tunnel, and the Kellerbau tunnel had its labor from the Gusen labor camp, which was about half the size of Mauthausen, but they're all within the same 5-6 kilometer area. And what then? He sent me a name of a Polish politician who was a prisoner there, and he was also a nuclear scientist, and he knew a whole lot of stuff after the war about very special things, and he made mentions of research at the Bergkristall tunnels. There was also a quite a assortment of French nuclear scientists that was imprisoned in Mauthausen. Now, what happened some years ago, and I'm going to break all this down for you in quite a few episodes. The reason why I just want to tell you what's going on and why it's taking me so long to do a proper episode is because now we are in a point where I have made suggestions to the Austrian government, to the Monuments Association, to the Mauthausen Association. They have hired out the supervision of all the World War II tunnel systems to two companies, BIG and S Consult. And I've written all of them, including a few other officials, asking for permission, number one, to document all these tunnel systems to show you guys what is there or what isn't there. Because half of the conspiracy that's going on in a lot of these sites is no one will let you look. And it is suspicious in itself that here's a place where you all say there's nothing there, but you're not allowed to look, and you wake up the next morning and it's a natural preserve and you can't dig. That means the government themselves, the institutions, are making these things. They are fueling any kind of conspiracy in this themselves. You see what once you start making laws or passing rules about what you can and cannot talk about, that will just fuel the opposition in every which way. It's never worked anywhere. So I'm trying to approach these people with logic. Don't laugh, I try. Logic and reason. And I offer to document all these at my expense. We'll rob banks later. We'll get to that bridge. My expense, virtual reality walkthroughs, like I said I would for the nonprofit. Make all of it, all these locations publicly available online where people can walk through them. And if they would provide me all the documents and the photos they have, I would provide them as well so everybody can see what's there. And if there's nothing there, nothing conspiratorial, that shouldn't be a problem, should it? So that was my offer to them, and that's what I was working on the past couple of weeks. And of course, no one has responded except the nice people from Jonas Thal were very nice and friendly, and for now told me no, I can't go play. And then I said, well, why can't History Channel and James Holland go play if you don't let me? That seems hardly fair to me and mine. So we are negotiating, I hope. Otherwise, well, there's the other way. There's always the other way. I just think out of professional courtesy, I will come through the front door and ask nicely. And Bergkristall it's a very interesting place because it's one of those places where a report was actually made, a very detailed report by a lot of very, very intelligent people with a whole lot of doctorates and professors, so and so on, this, that, and the other, all with associations, affiliations to the government or to Mauthausen. And let me finish my rant, and then we'll start looking at questions, because if I don't rant on, then I'm just going to lose track, and I'll never actually say anything intelligent, which is hard enough for me to do in the first place. So I have to focus with coffee thing thrown in. They're very nice at me. They're very friendly at Mauthausen. But what happened when Andreas Sulze, he started asking questions and making claims of things that he had seen and found, and there was around Bergkristall tunnel systems that hadn't been found, launch pads for missiles, tunnels that hadn't been found with nuclear research, tunnels with dead prisoners, a whole lot of things that he stated. And what they then did is they got the company S-Consult together, apparently working with Andreas to start drilling in some of the locations. He was also shut down from digging in some of these locations because, according to Austrian law, you're not allowed to dig into the underground, to archaeologically dig without having a government approved or a professor or somebody with a doctorate in archaeology from one of the universities, which basically translates to you can't look without one of them, which I understand. You don't want amateurs digging around archaeological sites, especially not when we get older and older. But it also hinders any kind of investigation. If they don't want to investigate, well, then you're not going to get to investigate something. And what they did a few things that are very suspicious, but they spent a lot of time working out this report that I'm going to break down in the episodes to come. So I'm going to show you what's there. And remember, they filled out, there's about 10 kilometers of tunnels. There's about 1.9 kilometers not filled up. They filled it up with cement, floor to ceiling. They drilled in boreholes. They filled it up everywhere. Structural stability was one issue because now the building's on top of these tunnels, which Rudi is the guy that spent 20 years getting the Mauthausen Memorial approved. He's a good guy, and he wants to know. Hang on, you guys. And he said that there was a structural issue with the Bergkristall tunnels, which I understand. Also because the Russians blew it up after they had done clearing out their stuff in the late 40s. However, what makes it so weird is there's 3 or 4 photos from Bergkristall tunnels that exists that we've seen, and we're talking about almost 10 kilometers of underground tunnels where 1,000 jet planes were made. And when I then talk to the good people everything revolves around what the people at Mauthausen wanted. When I write S-Consult, they don't respond. They just pass on my email or request to Mauthausen, who then writes me no, which I find strange because I'm writing to the government about something. But they're in charge. It's where prisoners were working and died, so it comes all under that umbrella. And in the report, they state they have a lot of photos, they have documentation, they have aerial photographs, and all these things they had at the Mauthausen camp. So, and reports that Andreas had said was classified. Well, they said they had all of it. So I requested they would share it with me so I could share it with you. I haven't got a response to that yet. Surprising. And we can talk about why History Channel pisses me off later. Besides the fact that they haven't sent me an enormous paycheck as they should have done, or something, or an apology for stealing my shows. Again, we're looking at 10 kilometers of underground tunnels, full of technology, full of equipment. It took the Russians almost 2 years to clear out the machinery from there, and that was after we had it for 2 months. It was taken over by a combat command under the Third Army that liberated the camps and liberated the tunnels, and then of course an extensive amount of surveys, photos, reports were done. The Air Force did one. I have a name of another individual. I don't know what military affiliation this person has, but his name's under one of them. And of course the CIC would have done that. This was a big deal. This was the big deal because this was the place that ran and functioned, and we documented it extensively. And we were kind of hoping that we could. Linz and Goesen are 2 towns that are practically on top of each other and divided by a small little river. And we had hoped that the U.S. had hoped we could keep those tunnels, which was asinine considering we handed over Jonastal and the Rehmark and everything else that the Russians didn't even have within the demarcation line originally. But anyway, we were hoping we could get that production line up and running again. So we kept it intact initially. until it became clear we had to hand everything over to the Russians in August of 45. So we started pulling out whatever we could. What I'm saying is this was documented 20 ways from Sunday, and there's 3 photos from inside these tunnels that have been made available, and 2 or 3 of them that are maybe 20 years old, where they're all empty. 10 kilometers of tunnels. I'm not saying anything. I'm not even going to. I'll speculate. I have some idea what's going on in there, but I want to see. And I've told all these entities and all these archives. A very nice staff sergeant I talked to at the Air Force yesterday. Archives, and everyone is sort of helping, because when I say, well, this was 77 years ago, now we just have to find the photos. I would think the Austrian archives or Mauthausen has them, and if they want to get rid of all the conspiracies, because the report does not get rid of the conspiracies, it only addresses the specific points that Andreas have made. And I've never met Andreas, but I have a lot of respect for him, because he worked hard at finding what he said he found. Unfortunately, he had also not shared it with anyone, because he has a deal with let's do the questions when I'm done talking about things I'm talking about, because otherwise I'll just get backtracked, just letting you guys know, or I'll just get derailed. He, in the report, consistently states that they couldn't show you what his claims were, because he wouldn't allow them to reproduce the photos, see the documents, and that he had them copywritten, and he has a deal with the German television program CDF, which have now aired, presumably, this was in 2014, 2015. So by now it should have aired everything he had to show them, but he's not sharing these documents, which I understand makes it hard for them to, but they still went out and drilled and they looked, but some of their conclusions are a little off. For instance, you have to read between the lines, or actually read the damn lines. When I talked to the historian at Mauthausen who did an interview with me, who's from there, whose name is actually the first name on the report, I didn't know, but he only sent it to me sometime after. He said there was only jet aircraft produced in these tunnels. All right. When I read the report says mostly jet aircraft were produced in this tunnel. That is a pretty damn different. That's what I'm talking about. This is where we need clarification, and this is where these authorities are not doing themselves any favors by leaving these gaps, and then by not just showing us. They spent years filling up these tunnels with cement, going through them, surveying them, how to best stabilize these and pour cement in all of them. That means every single part of these tunnel systems were photographed. They have not shared these photographs with anyone. These are empty tunnels. They did this in the 2000, 10, 11, 12, something, years after practically everything has been taken out. So what reason could there possibly be to not show us what these empty tunnels looked like? There's no reason why they wouldn't. And when I asked one of the again, everybody's very nice and polite to me, and I don't see why they wouldn't. From S-Consult, I asked him, can I see, why won't you take me to Kellerbau, which is the other tunnel system where they said weapons parts were produced to rifles. Something, the ME-262 production started there before Wettkristall was done. And then it moved to the bigger tunnel system, and then the rifle production for Steyr, Daimler Puch rifles, whatever, moved into there, some small military support stuff. And one tunnel was used for research of some department from a university. Well, still today, there can't possibly be anything left in there. And they said, well, they're flooded. And I talked to other people, said, well, only a small part of them are flooded. Well, they're not all flooded. They're also raised up high on top of a hill, so I would imagine water would drain out of them. But anyway, he wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me in. They wouldn't let me see them. And then I asked him why, and he said, "Well, we don't know where the footage is going." And I'm trying to figure out. The Russians had these places for 10 years, and that's the kind of thing. What? What am I going to do? Rebuild in my backyard? And this is the ridiculousness we're constantly getting. I went to Jonas Tal with the same approach. So much gossip, so much reputation, so much rumors, and believe it or not, a lot of the stuff that we have heard from everybody. Of course, some of it is gossip. Of course, some of it is well, we don't know what it is. But until they let us in and have a look, we also can't make up our mind. So somewhere in the archives, and the archive system is not exactly straightforward. If you file a FOIA request, they will only be limited to looking exactly at the wordage you have sought to sought for in that request. If you call the archive and say, "Can you help me look for this and this and this and sort of this," and it can be more vague, and if they want to help you, they can actually help. So that's kind of what I'm working on now, directly with the various archives, because we're also looking at, well, all these photos and reports were taken. Yes, where are they? Have they existed? Have they been scanned? Are they sitting in boxes? Were they mislabeled? That's what we're looking at. The nice archivist that I talked to from the Air Force archives did not think that there were any boxes that hadn't been gone through in one way or another. But we're also looking at, well, the other side. Now, my contention, until proven wrong, and most of yours, I'm pretty sure, is we have a, yes, we have, it's hard to not jump off. Yes, we have a narrative of history and of events that is preserved. And anything that falls outside that narrative uh, doesn't make it into the history books. And a lot of the networks, they follow the narrative, and they always focus on, even when you open up, like Lady just wrote, you open up on a document, damn, what's that word I'm looking for? A documentary on something. It'll start, oh, well, there's this great tunnel where they made this factory where they had these jet engines. And then you have 75% about the laborers, or the labor force, or the slave laborers, and you have very little about the production. Sometimes I'm seeing network episodes where they are going to a location where there might have been cyclotrons, they may have been jet engines, and they're talking about the building outside. They're not even going inside the tunnels or talking about it. It is, I don't know if it's deliberate obfuscation or it is just sloppy journalism, sloppy investigation, or to me, it's just, if you as a film or TV, or it's, for them, it's all about ratings. Okay, here it's all about ratings too. It's all about views and followers. But if you look at a network, they have to sell. It's about ratings. Well, isn't it more interesting to go inside a tunnel and say, well, here they built jets and maybe something else, than to talk about the gigantic mill outside? And so, to me, it's either a deliberate or it's just incompetence, or it's generally because they're trying to cookie cut their way through programming, where they're not actually digging in, which of course they also are doing, which is really frustrating, because you're sitting there and you get a couple of minutes of about a location, and then yeah, the chat's working. I'm just ignoring it because I'm talking. um, sorry, Ian, but yeah, I see you. Puna, yes, Paperclip. There was lots and lots of people came over on a Paperclip, but I'm not looking for them. Paperclip, we know who they were. Kamala didn't come over to America under Paperclip. What's this? Barbie didn't work for the CIA under Paperclip. There's a lot of other things. There's the Yugoslav Croatian war. He was later sentenced for war crimes, and I cannot remember his name. Tukovic. He lived in Los Angeles, and he came over here not under Paperclip. He came on a Red Cross passport issued to him in Switzerland, going over Scotland. and then to the United States, and he didn't get extradited until '84. So by no means is Paperclip the end all be all. I do think Fiebingham may have come under Paperclip. Quite frankly, I really don't care how they got here under what project. But when I asked the nice people at the CIA, so what is Donovan's relevance? And Casper, this pretty much is it. I am a historian, and I make documentaries and movies and consult on security matters. I have all the professions that leaves me absolutely useless to the rest of the world. And so first we have to dig through and find out where did these documents go. And then we have to gain access to these locations because, like I was saying, there's the only reason. Well, okay, there's two reasons why they will not share photos from. Let's take back Cristal because it's such a wonderful example, because I know they spent several years filling them up with cement and construction and working, and there was a problem because they're radioactive, and they say it's because it's in granite and it's radon and all that's fine. I'm not even going to go there right now. I'm just saying they documented this extensively because they had a lot of construction companies work for years filling them up. So they had to document them to figure out how to best shore up all these tunnel systems that they claim were collapsing. So there's thousands of footage and videos of them from inside these tunnels that are now filled up. I don't think a tunnel system that has been filled up 90% by cement can be any less threatening to anyone. So there is no reason on this planet why they cannot share the photos from that undertaking, unless, and that is what they're doing. They are by not showing the photos, that you can only, in a logical mind, but now you're going to talk about this is bureaucrats whose prime function in life is to say no, because no one ever got fired for saying no. And that is pretty much what seems to be the dictate in all these agencies. Is it's much easier to say no than to say yes, because, oh my God, what happened? And but by saying no, by not showing us, you can only, as a logical individual, deduct one conclusion, and is there something in these tunnels that they don't want you to see? It's very simple. That is the only deduction you can make. And that is the case I finally made to them, is like, by not letting us see the photos. Okay, fine. Let's even go with the photos from World War II, from all these reports. All this was lost to time, or flooding, or the draft record fire, or whatever. But the photos and the videos you took 15 years ago, you have them all. By not sharing them, my only conclusion is that there's something you don't want me to see in there. And I've seen a lot of empty tunnels. Unless the only thing I can think of is you'll see foundations of machinery there's thousands of machines in there, 10 kilometers of tunnels. What weird foundation? Then show me half of the photos. Show me half the tunnels. Don't show me the thing you don't want me to show, because obviously they did make planes in there. So a lot of these tunnels were dedicated to making planes. And there's no doubt about that. And if you show me 100 photos from 70% of the tunnels, who am I to say that the 10% of the tunnels that were dedicated to something else, that you're not showing me those photos? I mean, now I really have to start matching up maps to that. They are just not helping themselves. Waldorf Proving Grounds is an active military testing and maneuver ground. I get why they don't want people running around in there. They're testing munitions. They're still training. They're still shooting guns there every day. The military is there. And I made that clear to them also, that obviously I don't want to get into anything you guys are using. And if what I want to see is what I wrote them was, I would like to see the tunnels and bunkers on Ordorf Proving Ground by Jonas Thal at the S3 project, that the German, that was built during the war, before or during the war, that you are not currently using. Or I would also like to see what the Russians built that you are not currently using, because I don't want to do anything that gets involved in military secrecy, because it's military. You have your secrets, you test your stuff, you do your thing. I have full understanding for that. I'm pretty sure if we got into the proving ground, it would be with a military driver, so we couldn't accidentally make a right turn into something else. And there's been, like I said, there's been a few TV crews in there. I just started by asking the big questions. And again, we're back to the Russians. I have written their archives a few times. I'm guessing, given the situation right now, answering back is a little more time consuming. And I figure it might be better if I have one of my Russian friends actually talk to the archives out there because of what's going on. And so eventually the Russians will show us. The Russians spent more time in Jonasthal and Ohrdorf than the German army, who took it over in 92. The Russians were there ever since 45. They know what's there. So military secrecy as to World War II installations? No, there's no secrecy. The Russians already know. I'm pretty sure the Chinese wanted to know. They'll know too, but I don't think they care. However, if you have a very large underground bunker that was built in Ohrdorf for a German government or Hitler, that they are still using today as the possible secure seat of government in case of crisis, which is possible. I wouldn't actually think that's what they have there. Then don't show me that, but show me something else. Shut me up. Because you know eventually there are people that will cross the wire and figure it out. You can't cover everything up. And I now have the aerial photographs from some of the bomb tests. And people have been looking around, like when you saw on History Channel when Mr. Holland was in there looking at the bomb test site. We all saw that on Hunting Hitler. The only problem is Mr. Holland was in the wrong place. He's in the wrong place according to the aerial photographs that I have, that I put up on my Patreon. And there's other things and structures that I would like to see. And all they can see is, well, we can show you this and this, but we can't show you this and this because we're using it. That's fair. I think that is a very fair tit for tat. But you got to give a little. But of course, telling the German military or the Austrian government that they got to give a little, did that ever work? Which brings me to one thing I want to clarify as well. When I talk about that I'm going to go to the Ukraine, I just want to make clear so you all understand. I'm trying to go as a military correspondent because I still belong to the military department. I still have to answer to military code of conduct, and I am not allowed to go fight because then I will get court-martialed, which a few dudes already have. But as a military historian, I really want to go to document the battle situation, the fighting, and try to figure out. For years, military historians will try to figure out what is going on at this conflict, how the Russians fared as they did. And please don't get me wrong. Now, we usually don't talk current day, but let's talk Ukraine just for 5 minutes. And we all talk about, oh, yes, the Ukrainians are kicking the Russians' ass, and they're winning. The Russians are not historically a people who are casualty sensitive. With all respect to my Russian friends, I'm sure there are some Russians listening now, and I think you will agree that the Russian way of war have never been one where casualties really mattered. It has never been a thing for the Russian military or the communist government or Stalin or whoever to put bullets in people who disagreed, or to not outright put up blockers and shoot retreating soldiers themselves. If the Germans would do it in World War II, the Russians spent 10 years in Afghanistan. and they didn't pull out until Glasnost, pretty much. So for them to think that they are beaten by having lost 10, 15,000 people, and even if their leadership is militarily incompetent these days and poorly trained, and the soldiers are poorly trained, it's not like they have a lack of soldiers to throw in there if they want to. So I don't think it's going to last forever. Just my opinion. Somehow I'm not seeing it will, because if it will go one way or another, and then it will go away. They can't take all of the Ukraine. They know that. There's not going to be a settled peace. Everyone's losing money, including the West. Um, and again, I don't know but as a military historian, I would like to go as a correspondent and try to figure out and piece through this. And I am still waiting for a meaningful communication with the Ukrainian military department. Since there's martial law, I have to get permission to go in. And I have to get my paperwork in order because, like I said, I have too much respect to my commanding general than to go get myself court-martialed. And so I just wanted to clarify that. But as soon as the paper is good, I will go. And after that, there's this week. We've been shipping a lot of stuff out there. Anyway. That was my 2 cents on that. I just wanted to make sure on that one, and so we got a couple of things. Well, all asking questions. There's a couple of things we wanted to talk to besides the prison of war during World War I working situation. Well, we can talk about that now. I had an interesting question about when Roger and we walked through the World War One. Bunkers and forts and tunnels. Someone asked in the chat, I think 2 weeks ago. Gee, thanks. Yeah. Somebody asked in the chat if how many prisoners it took to build the bunkers and forts and dig the trenches. Now, during World War One, there was over 7 million prisoners of war sitting around in camps in everyone, France, England, Russia, Austro-Hungary, Prussia, Germany. And just in 2016, not 2016, in 1916, there was, I think there was there 2.4 million of them were in German hands. And by what am I doing? 1916, there was 560,000 of them that were actually working, and it is very interesting. But they would, don't get me wrong. World War One was an enormous draw and of attrition on a lot of all countries in Europe. It's interesting because you had the French hinterland where there was never behind the lines. There was never any question of starvation. They had plenty of food. They had plenty of everything. Getting it up to the front and feeding people was something else entirely. And in England, they had a little bit less. And Germany was surrounded and boxed in more and more towards the end. And what that did was cause a whole great deal of starvation. And probably you can say World War War ended because the Germans and Austria-Hungary, finally, first of all, the Austrians were started negotiating for a separate peace, which did not make. Tommy, what the hell are you doing? You do not. No. You stop that. No. I'm off coffee for a bit. Send the world. Oh, thank. Oh, oops. What am I doing? Sorry. I won't go away. I'm talking. Damn you. So starvation was a big problem in Germany and Austria. That they were literally eating cardboard in 1917 and 18. They were starved into submission more so than running out of fighting will. And what it also did on all fighting sides was a great attrition in fighting capable men, which is also the men that would be farming and making food and harvesting working in the mines and other key agriculture and things that are important for every country to stay alive. So when the young men goes off to fight and get replaced by hundreds of thousands of prisoners, then Geneva Convention, fine. The Convention of how to treat prisoners, what they can and cannot do. Yes, prisoners are not allowed. You can't force them to work. The officers can't be forced to work. It didn't go very long before the prisoners were made to work under the assumption that if you want to eat, you need to work. Both because every country was running out of capable bodies of working, and everyone used these laborers. Uh, Britain, France, Germany, everybody had some prisoners of war in the field working and doing things. They were not out in the front lines digging trenches. They were not building forts. The forts were mostly built before the war started. All the German bunkers and gun installations, like the ones I visited, these things were built by German engineers or naval engineers or whoever, um, whatever installation was going to crew this place and this thing. You're not going to take prisoners of war, bring them back, and then bring them back to the front line near where they might be able to escape from, and then have them build anything. A lot of miners were drafted on both sides to come in. We were talking about that last episode as well, the one that I missed. I love it when I miss me. And a lot of miners were brought in and to work on the tunnels and so on. So, and it's interesting when you look at the labor camp system during World War One, of how prisoners were made to work, civilians were forcibly drafted, like out of Belgium. Lady, you know all about that. Men, women, children, and a lot of them didn't come back until after the war in 1918. A lot of people were forcibly drawn into Germany and made to work. And the Russian prisoners, and especially the interesting at the Brest-Litovsk um, treaty, where the Germans were in 1918. Um, they did a deal with the Russians that you both would compensate the other one for the prisoners they fed, because a lot of times the food and would come from the other side, or at least money for it, because it became a big problem for Germany, especially to feed their prisoners of war, because they have, now 2.5 million prisoners of war to feed, and they don't have enough food for their own. And if you parallel the German prisoner of war situation, the lack of food, medicines, and but the way the camp system was set up, and the major camps, the sub camps, the sending prisoners out to the local communities to work under guard, it was very similar to what happened in World War II. It was very much it seemed like a duplication of the same system, except to a larger extent. During World War II, the prisoners were worked to death. And then, of course, you also had the Jews that were shipped further east and killed there outright. So uh, it's not that it's an interesting origin as to where and how the labor camp system came from. And you all want me to make coffee. Do I look that damn tired? Lady, you don't answer that. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. I do. Um, Lady's always the one that says I look tired and old. Thanks. Um, but anyway, what I am trying to do, and one of the things I try to do with the people at Mauthausen, is try to break down exactly how the labor system worked, who benefited from it economically. And World War II labor camp system was a source of revenue for the SS, who ran it, rented out the laborers, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you're not allowed to say I look old either. Um, Thank you, Donnie. Why do we always know when we're lying to one another? Lady, I need you to find me a star fort out there in your neck of the wood, by the way. Could also be in Holland. Not entirely sure. There's a very large star fort that I can't find, that I only seen a picture of 3 years ago. It's not a star fort. I'm lying. It's a triangular fort. It's all of the old Bredelmont forts. Anyway, it's very interesting parallel of how the forced labor system worked from those two wars. I'm going to break that down more in episodes to come, and I would very much like to work with the people who run the Mauthausen camp for a number of reasons, and I'm kind of hoping they're going to take me up on it. Although I may have to get you guys lobby some college to get me a double doctorate, even if it's honorary, to satisfy them to treat me as an equal. I guess a master's is not good enough. There's a lot of that. I'll make fun of it anyway. And so what the question was, how many forced laborers were building the fortifications on the front line of World War One? Practically none. So there's that answer. And if you're here and you're listening and you have any follow-up questions to that one, you let me know. The other question was, if there's any questions on this, it's very hard to do the Bechdel tunnel episode for me because start doing that because there's so much to dig into. There's so many claims and counterclaims and so little footage because I was allowed in and I saw the one tunnel that I could get to visit and fly. I flew all the way out there, got new equipment because I'm going to see it. There's still a kilometer they wouldn't show me because, it's hazardous, it's dangerous, that you can't go anywhere, won't let you in. And Lord knows there's nothing I hate more than people that won't let me into places because they think it's dangerous. Because the governmental engineer's definition of dangerous is quite possibly based on extreme liability rules and regulations that usually kind of, I live in a parallel universe. I don't live in that world. I live in a different world where liability is it's something you serve with sauce and gravy, like the livery. And anyway, then I have a with all these requests and emails I sent, the ones I really hope to hear back from, and it's kind of a romantic shout out, but I have to say, like, hi CIA, how are you? I missed you. You never call me anymore, and I know we should spend more time talking, and CIA. And I think maybe we should go away together for a weekend somewhere, and we'll have drinks and we'll walk on the beach and we'll talk about it. But and I know I said things, CIA, I did. I had bad days and I said things about you, and I didn't mean it, and I love you. I just think you should call me, and we could do so many things together. Maybe go away. We could share a puppy, but call me. I'll bring drinks. Anyway, CIA, love you. Anyway, just wanted to say that because, someone wrote me that they're listening, and God knows at work I've been watching too many X-Files, and I think we all still had a crush on Scully. So I'm hoping that the CIA will send me a real life version of Dana Scully with all the information from after the war that I really want. And I promise I'll say nice things about Donovan even. And see, this is the funny thing, and don't get me wrong. And CIA, you don't get me wrong either, because it's love. I understand why we have agencies that do things and keep things secret and do things in the night. I honestly have no idea exactly what the CIA is doing, and I will question some of it if I, of course, knew exactly what it was. But I'm certainly questioning what some of them, and in my time I have met a few people that were from different agencies that I sort of questioned what and who and how, especially why. So we need agencies that gets things done. We need people who take foreign spies out in swamps with silencers and things like that. It's just the fact that I get it. It's just the fact of life that sometimes bad people needs to go away, and you can't get them the way you get them, and you need agencies to do that. And I get that at the end of the Second World War, there was a whole lot of assets sitting in conquered Germany, and we wanted them before the Russians got them. And a lot of the German Austrian assets, SS, and whatever you have, yeah, and they would rather work with us than they would work with the Russians. I understand that, and you understand what went on the Eastern Front and what went on Germany, Russia, and the whole idea behind National Socialism was anti-communist. Despite quite a few of the top leading Nazis did that they were flirting with socialism and even communism to some degree, uh, in a Soviet sense. Like Goebbels, he at one point declared himself a communist in the Russian national sense, not an international socialist. It was a very borderline fine line to walk, where Goebbels actually thought they could be friends and reach out. He was inspired by the Russians and the communist experiment until Hitler dialed him in, uh, left, right, and it would make clear that the Russians and the communists were the enemy. And given how that war was fought and how that we can always go into why that was just a stupid way of waging the war. But that was just it was hard to recover from post-war and go back and say, oh yes, now we can be friends after we have been slaughtering each other the worst way, and women and children are raped and killed and dead in the streets, and all these horrible things that happened towards the east. um, Not that this is not about atrocities, but most of the Germans, they knew that the Americans or British would probably treat them better. Although the Americans and British also had no problem shooting SS men and German soldiers outright. Let's 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 not kid ourselves about what war is, and let's not kid ourselves about what prolonged propaganda does. And seeing an enemy kill your friends and you lose people next to you, alongside with having been told, because all sides told their soldiers horror stories about the opposing side. So they went to war thinking the very worst, because propaganda is a thing and has been a thing in all wars. All wars are preceded and supported by an extreme propaganda picture. And if you are in World War II, where you can't just look stuff up on the internet, not that you can anymore, um, but to the same degree, you couldn't just reach out and well, it's not really true. You can't just fact check what you were told in World War II, and you believed your government. Any of you old timers left? Remember that when you believed? Never mind. But you believed outright what you heard, what you were told, and so for GIs, they hated the Germans when they got there, as opposed to World War One, when they thought they were going to fight the Dutch, the Belgians, because they Dutch Germans, aren't they the same? Um, so there was a hatred on all sides, and atrocities were just part of that war. But still, we're back to, I understand why our agencies brought all these Germans over here. And you can say, yes, but they did horrible things. Is it yes? Maybe some of them did. Klaus Barbie did. There are people that did horrible things that we hired for years afterwards. And then you can ask, well, what is the moral price to pay? And as a historian, I usually try not to dive into the moral aspect of things, because it's not for me to cause judgment. It's for me to tell you what some of these people did, and then you can gauge that up to your own moral compass. I don't think it's right for historians to lend opinions. Um, Although, as someone who studies psychology, reading Goebbels' diary and his um, women issues alongside with his what happened to his foot when he was very young, we there's some interesting there's a meaty bone for a psychiatrist to dig into why Goebbels was and ended up the way he did and behaving the way he did, although it doesn't exactly come clear. Um, so, morally, can you justify the defense of your nation if that's why you did it, or did you do it because you wanted money? Because a lot of these assets and possibly also money came with the SS, came with some of these people, came like with some of the bankers, and a lot of the money had been deposited in Switzerland, and that's where dollars was. So there's big business, big business initially supported the Nazis' rise, and Goering sort of started running them over after he got in power with their support, with their financial support, with their aid, which is very interesting because Goering is also a very interesting character. And despite having a drug problem and being up and down, on and off, if you read what the story of his life and how he rags to riches and Hitler's everything in the Third Reich seems to be about Hitler's approval and support. And if you're losing that, you change your mind. I get that. And so it's very interesting to try to put yourself in their feet to understand why they did what they did. So you can now look at, well, did American intelligence agencies bring these people over and to get their assets so they could defend themselves for against the next war? Did they bring them over because, I mean, technically, the Germans were incredibly advanced and they had things on paper that we had not yet dreamt of, which is why it's very interesting. And I think that's part of the last Nazi secret. Yes, all right, fine, I need coffee. Um, Part of that series was specifically that the Germans had a more advanced technical way of looking at some things. We had some great stuff. The British had great stuff. The Russians just had a lot of stuff. Rather crude, but they had a lot of stuff. Um, Lauren DeMello, and I asked Lauren if she wanted to come on several times, and she's busy writing a book. At least last she asked, or I talked to her. So hopefully, sooner or later, I'll catch that woman, even if it's over a steak in Buenos Aires. Um, but there's also you can take all the Cold War preparation, and you can take all these. Nobody wants to talk about the German technically advanced the war. Even the people from Dual Mittelbau wrote me back. We have no interest in what happened in the tunnels, only what happened in the labor camp. Where I think there's quite a lot of people that are actually very interested in the technology and the advancement of construction that happened in the Dual Mittelbau tunnels, where they built jet fighters and they built V2s and so on. And there seems to be a deliberate avoidance on the parts of some historians and some governments and some networks, that they specifically don't want to open the door to the German research, despite the fact that 90% of whatever the Germans were researching 77 years ago even had on the drawing board. It is probably not relevant at this point, unless there's that one anomaly that we all kind of suspect that might be there, that still is. But it's hard to find. We have to back up and work our way up the technology tree. And that's what I sort of have been doing with the last Nazi secret. Is I wanted to find out, well, let's see the sites, let's find out where things and production and research took place. And then we'll find out, okay, they had enough room. If I find a tunnel that was big enough to hold the America rocket, well, that will probably make me somewhat suspicious that the planning stage and maybe even testing stage of this rocket was far more advanced than we have been told. And the thing is, even if we I'm just waiting for Joseph to recover and let him get his sea legs again. I chatted with him just yesterday. But yeah, of course. Um, the fact that I am at this point sure that there are components of German research that went into the American nuclear bomb project. If it's uranium, enriched uranium, the infrared proximity triggers, entire bombs. So far, there's every indication that materials and some components certainly went from Germany into the American program, especially with the Sutton is important, addition of uranium after Germany's surrender, that it does not match with the production pattern of enrichment on our part. So, and nobody wants to go there because they have always said, well, Germany was not advanced enough. They didn't have it, couldn't do it, couldn't make the bomb. And I'm thinking they tested a bomb. They tested several bombs. We don't want to talk about it. But now I saw the aerial photos from 45 of Jonastal. And it's hard not to, I haven't shared them all. One of them is on my Patreon. The other ones I haven't shared yet because, well, quite a few reasons. You'll get there. I'm not hiding anything from you. I just don't want everybody to know what I know yet or who I'm talking to about it, because I just want to know. And I don't think it's important enough to keep it secret. I think it's rather ridiculous because the governments are intelligence networks, high CIA, and the German equivalent of the CIA, and all you guys. Your job is to keep secrets and do things that people don't know about. That's your job. I get it. So nobody who asks you for anything, the mandatory answer is no. So I understand that too. The problem is you do also work for a government that is generally becoming less trusted, and that's all of them, by obviously hiding or obfuscating information that shouldn't be necessary to hide. And 77-year-old information should not be necessary to hide. And this is my case to the intelligence networks that doesn't like to talk about their past is we all suspect some things. There's all these illogical questions and lack of access to things that shouldn't have been. And even if it comes out that the Germans during the war built several bombs, even if it comes out that we dropped one of them in Japan, even if that is where the chips fall, well, guess what? We still won the war. So the bigger picture remains the same, except you have to sort of go back and credit some people you really didn't like because they were not very nice. Or just because you didn't think they were nice. I don't know if they're nice because I haven't met them. They're all dead. But that is sort of where we are. It's about giving credit to people that, well, no, that can't be right. That shouldn't be. You still won the war. American forces, soldiers, GIs on the ground, Russians, British, French, soldiers won the war. Why they won the war, who they won the war for, who ran the world after that. We all remember Eisenhower's warning of the military-industrial complex, which I think we see thriving today in a way that would probably make Eisenhower turn over in his grave. But soldiers on the ground with tanks and guns won the war. And by mere production and numbers, they beat the German soldiers on the ground. And that's just a fact you can't run away from. So whatever happened, that fact doesn't change. So I think it's okay to talk about whatever it was and let the chips fall where they may. And maybe some of the people we've been told are horrible people, maybe they weren't horrible people, maybe they or just scapegoats. Maybe these things will come out as well. And I think if you start digging into who did what, you'll find that some people you think were good guys are actually horrible people, and some people you think are horrible people may actually not be as horrible as you think. So that's kind of where we are on that. And what a wonderful segue into Himmler and Goering wanted to get rid of Ernst Röhm and the SA. Not entirely sure what the question was, but when you talk about infighting in the Third Reich, um, there are so many parallels between the Third Reich, the industry, the propaganda machine, the press, how things were run and done and presented till today in certain Western democracies, as we would imagine them to be. There are parallels that are absolutely terrifying. Um, when you look at whom have learned the lessons out of Nazi Germany and how they have learned from the way Goebbels managed propaganda. And it's very interesting because I keep thinking, as you all know, I don't talk about current politics, and that's not something I want to do publicly because that's not what we're here for. Possibly we can do those on the private Patreon chat that gets deleted instantly, except for you, CIA. You can come. You can come. You want to join the private chats any day? You're welcome. I make coffee. Come here, sit down. And wait a minute, Scully was FBI. Shit. Anyway, never mind. I'm sure the CIA have a very attractive female. I'm sure the Chinese have a whole lot of attractive female spies. Anyway, that's not what we're here for. Scratch all that. We'll just chalk it up to complete and utter lack of coffee. But yeah, Scully, she was pretty. Um, we go back to when I see the word I would love to say is statecraft, is politicians with decorum and style and intelligence and cunning. Uh, yeah, they were FBI. The X Files were FBI, not CIA. American Dad is CIA, and probably closer to the truth too. Um, anyway, um, when you look at statecraft, when you look at the speeches that was done 70 years ago, 80 years, 90 years ago, there were grand and great politicians and leaders we've had in the past that would hold great speeches and say great things. And then you have others who say less great things and generally say really stupid things like let's kill other countries' leaders or things like that are really asinine things to say. And then I think back on what Goebbels did initially when the British started bombing Germany and were trying to target industrial targets in Germany and the early openings of the air war. Goebbels would come out and say in the newspaper the next day, only one bomb dropped on this factory. You didn't kill anybody. Production is back and running at 99%. While Churchill was, because he wanted to, there was a war between Goebbels and Churchill. And the interesting thing is Goebbels really admired Churchill because Churchill was really good at propaganda. Churchill was really good at getting people on his side and convincing arguments, again, the grand speeches. He would be seen at the places where the bombs had fallen, and the British would exaggerate the numbers of dead at every bombing rate they'd done on Germany. And initially, when Churchill comes, we killed 10,000 Germans in this bombing raid, put in the newspapers, Goebbels was afraid that this would be read by the German population and be a hit to morale. So he went out and countered it immediately. Say, no, didn't kill that many people. You didn't hit the factory at all. We're all fine. And the British would read that and go like, thank you for that bit of information. Let's come back tomorrow. So the German Air Force had to go to Goebbels and tell him to shut up because he was literally telling them that they were failing. And it was much better to let them continue thinking that they were failing and keep missing the targets than literally keep giving them information that would dial them back in on track. um, which is a sort of note on that, and that was one of the things that he had to learn, that I thought was very interesting when you talk about statecraft. Somebody said something about statecraft that I thought was an interest. Statecraft is an MI6 branch. Statecraft is an MI6 branch in London, is it? Well, that's not the one I was talking about, Kareem. I was talking about the terminology of statecraft, of speeches, of leadership, of saying clever and smart things. Um, for instance, you don't want to say that if certain countries would drop chemical weapons, then we would drop chemical weapons in return, because we don't have any, well, officially, we don't have any offensive chemical weapons. Officially, I don't know. I'm not in the chemical unit, never were. But you don't want to say shit like that. You just don't. It is really poor statecraft. Like, what you want to do things where you need the various agencies, and this is UCIA. You want to get stuff to the Ukrainians, you get stuff to the Ukrainians. You don't necessarily want to put up on the front page of the newspaper whatever deals you're doing. All the proxy wars we've been fighting over the years, well, everybody knew who supported everybody. The Russians support these guys, and we support these guys, and the Chinese support these guys, and we support those guys. We sort of know, but it's usually not one of those things we talk about. And that's what I mean by statecraft, is you let the guys do what they're good at doing. It just seems that these days we don't have that many people that are good at doing anything. Um, anyway, so that also brings us back to, it really is a very fascinating study of the 30s of Nazi Germany, of how Goering would be extremely busy wrangling German industry, and he would take a lot of money from a lot of companies. He really, really would. And he had been broke and literally pawning whatever he had. And he's just as he came into power in 33, his beloved wife died, and from every indication that really did break him, because he really was in love with Karen, Colin, and named everything after her. I feel very sorry for his next wife, the actress, and she sort of probably felt sorry for herself as well. At one point, Hitler had asked Goering's new wife if there's anything he could do, if there's anything she would wish for, and she said she wished her husband was just a simple pilot, and not the Reich Marshal and all that he was. But Goering really took charge of German business, and he outmaneuvered everybody for economical power. And of course, he also sat on the police that Himmler wanted. Eventually, Himmler and Goering made peace with each other, as well as, to some degree, Goebbels and Himmler. They all sort of figured it out. There were people that no one ever really got along with, um, which, well, is interesting, except Hitler. And there were people like Rosenberg that Hitler would keep on forever, despite the fact absolutely nobody else liked him or wanted him, and he kept, certainly according to Goebbels, screwing up 10 ways from Sunday. So I'm not necessarily going to say, "Oh, say I'm wrong." I like that. I'm not wrong, but I'm not right. Hang on for a minute. I'm not saying you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. Hang on. That's what I'm writing. I'm saying it's a hard scientific approach. Quantum mechanics is general. Oh, of course I'm not right or wrong. I have no idea I don't know anything about quantum mechanics, but I'll probably find the tunnels where the people who did knew. I was talking about what I'm talking about now. Yeah, so what we're then looking at was we're looking at institutions within Germany that had power that was only answerable to Hitler, because he was the only one keeping his hands over some of these people, like Rosenberg. And then you had, at the early years, where the SA was becoming incredibly powerful and becoming a threat. Now, two parts of this story is, was Röhm, Ernst Röhm, really, he was head of the SA. Hitler brought him back after he came to power. There was a constant power struggle within the Nazi party, and especially when Hitler was in prison in 23, 24. When he came out, he wanted all his officers back, and he outmaneuvered everybody else because he was generally more popular. So he got his way, and that pissed off a few people like Strasse and his brother. And Goebbels was very much on the side and working with Strasse, because Strasse was more of a socialist, leaning left than most others. And that's sort of where Goebbels had found himself until Hitler dialed him in and he switched camps, which Strasse didn't really understand. I don't think he noticed it. He didn't notice that Goebbels had switched. He was more about Hitler than the cause, and a lot of people compromised their own beliefs to be following Hitler's party line. And there was some debate about what the party line was initially. And Goebbels had written some 25 points on what he thought it should be that was rather left-leaning, and Strasse had supported that until they went to meet Hitler, and he spent 4 hours on the stage before they met explaining what the party line was, which was opposite, or certainly opposing most of Goebbels' points, whereafter Strasse called all the other Gauleiters and told them to literally destroy the document that Goebbels had written. At this point, Goebbels wasn't in the inner circle yet, but he was growing. He wasn't even the Gauleiter of Berlin yet. And at this point in time, we're looking at an infighting within the party that who's blocked what, who, where, well. That also now begin to affect Ernst Röhm, because Ernst Röhm was unhappy with the way Hitler was running things and doing things, and he wanted to do something else. And it was a lot of, oh, him, I haven't seen him. That was, sorry, something else. And Röhm wanted one direction, and the SA was, they were causing trouble. And when you see the narrative, and that's one thing I always found is interesting, when you hear the narrative in documentaries today, or even have a lot of historians talk about it, you will only hear how the Nazis were political assassination and beating up people here, there, and left and right. But the other side is the socialists and the communists in Germany were most certainly doing the same thing. There was constant fighting between the left and the right, and there were assassinations, and people were killed, assassinated, beaten to death, kidnapped, all of the aboard by everybody. That's the thing. If we have to remember this correctly, then remember that everybody did this. There was a mess in the 20s and 30s of Germany, until Hitler came to power and just outlawed the other side, which will usually shut them up. It's when you outlaw them and then and you're in power and you then lock them up if they break the rules. Well, that'll quiet them down. Fact of life. But he still had to contend with Röhm, and Röhm's people were still causing more and more trouble, and they were starting to demand the disbandment of the German army to be replaced by SA men. Now, everybody had a great deal of respect for the German army, because you have to remember everybody had served. Well, not everybody, but Hitler had, Goering had served in the German army, and they were very much in that sense traditionalists, and they certainly did not want to see the army disappear, and they did not want to see the SA take over the army, because now you're also looking at an outright threat to Hitler's leadership, which is what it really became about. So whether it's been claimed that Heydrich and Himmler made up the conspiracy case, that Röhm was actively planning a second revolution. One of the words that Hitler absolutely didn't want to hear was the word second revolution, because he had his and he was in power, and we definitely didn't want to talk about another one. And that was one of where Röhm was starting to diverge from Hitler to the degree where they had less and less in common. The fact that he was homosexual didn't really seem to be, no one really seemed to care. There's quite a few high-ranking officers, also for on Goering's ministry, and that were gay, and everybody knew, and no one really cared, except Himmler, because he kept tabs on them and kept telling. Himmler would always tell Hitler about if anybody was doing something unsavory, especially complained about Goebbels a lot for a long time, citing how impossible it was to try to have a Germany of proper ideals and of family. And you remember they also made it illegal to it made it very hard for German couples to divorce. And if they were to divorce, they had to live together for a year, try to make it work before a divorce was granted. And at this point in time, Goebbels was having an affair with Lida Barova, the actress, and wanting to leave his wife for her. And Himmler was complaining incessantly about Goebbels' many affairs, at the same time while he was preaching about family values. So Hitler sat them down and told them to get rid of the poor actress, and who was a very young girl at the time. You really can't blame her for what was going on, considering that Hitler was in charge. Goering was in charge. Bloody hell, Goebbels was in charge of all propaganda in the Reich, and all film production, and the TV studios, and what was produced and what wasn't. And she was an actress. And now he found out that she was interesting. So he had her boyfriend deported after I think he slapped her around. And that didn't go well for anyone. And so we're back to Röhm again. A little bit elaborating down. I'm working on Goebbels' documentary. Sorry. Now I'm drowning myself. And speaking of, Goebbels, try to find photos of him under 30 or under 20. Hard. But he's an interesting character. And when it came to, he got himself very unpopular with the Night of the Long Knives, because he is the one that called it without the consent of everybody, because he thought Hitler would appreciate it. And that didn't go well. And Goering was furious with him because of the damage done to antiques and arts. But that's a whole different story. We're back to Röhm again. Röhm was a threat to Hitler. And I think he was, because he had the following he had. There was several million SA men. But the army wouldn't back Hitler unless he got rid of the SA. And now you're looking at, hypothetically, if they had survived side by side, could the SA have become what the SS was? I think, hypothetically, if the war had lasted into the 50s, let's say Germany had won the war. Let's say Germany had won the war, and we're looking at 1950. The SS would probably have taken over control of pretty much everything, every institution that mattered. They would probably be the preempt fighting force, where the army would slowly be relegated to a support role of the SS. I think there was enough Germans and veterans in Germany who revered the concept of the army, and certainly wouldn't want to threaten the existence of the German army, or as the SA would, being the new radicals. And I think that was too radical an idea or a concept for Hitler to swallow. And he needed still the support of the establishment, and the army was a very significant part of that establishment. So Röhm was the one that had to go. That's just that was one of the main reasons why Röhm had to go. Hitler was very much up and down about what to do with him. If and he suggested if we could maybe we just deport him or kick him out or send him in exile or because they still went way back and they've still been friends for some over 10 years. And a lot of a lot of what happened at the Night of the Long Knives before what I meant with Night of the Long Knives, I meant Kristallnacht. Kristallnacht got Goebbels in trouble, not Long Knives. Um, so what am I missing? I'm just catching up on the chat or hey, multitasking without coffee. It's just impossible. Let's just face it. Yeah, obviously it was the inspiration of the SA to and certain members to commit what they did at Kristallnacht was what got Goebbels in trouble. Night of the Long Knives were getting rid of Röhm and some of his people, and some under 200 people were killed in those days. And there was long lists that was drawn up where everybody had met out at Keinhall, where Goering had called for a lot of people to come out to Goering because they were there. They were to be safe. Put up mounted machine guns and sandbags outside Keinhall. When he was there, Himmler was there. A lot of other executives were there to talk about who was to be executed and who was to be spared. Um, ah, um, interesting. Possibly. That is how it really went down over that night. Was Hitler was presented a um, he was out of Berlin. He was presented with a telegram from Heydrich that a revolution was breaking out, and there was fighting in the streets, and William was responsible for this. That's how it physically happened. The lists of who to get and what scores to settle. And quite a few scores were settled that had nothing really to do with this. Um, and all right, something going on in the chat that I at some point in time need to look at in a minute, and I guess we'll have a conversation about it, whatever it is. So behave until I actually start paying attention. That's what, we can talk. Who come? Well, you can. All right, hold on to that. Who killed who over Will? Um, hang on. No, that was you. See, that's why I don't want to read the chat while I'm actually trying to do a point here. All right, what are you saying? Yes, U.S. is. Okay, well, that point is not entirely unvalid. I will just say, but let's just. I will deal with you guys in a minute. Worse humanism, basic humanism. I mean, who's? Yeah. All right, hang on. Would you guys hang on for a minute? Let me just finish my damn thought here. Like I said, I'm very much in favor of people having the conversation they want to have, as long as we're not talking current politics or outright offending anybody. Well, actually, I really Just because you're offended doesn't mean that you're right, was what I would usually say to people. However, I it's just like you never know what offends these days. So I guess I'll say when I'm offended. Uh, the dictatorial world and way I run my YouTube. Just kidding. See, I could be in the CIA too. See, I can run things. Um, and so, and a lot of the people that were executed in the Night of the Long Knives were, quite a few of them were by accident, and because they were in the way. There was the wives of the general that was by accident in the way. There were there were mistaken identities. There was one that was killed on that, had the same name. It was a bit of a mess. And when it the next day it became clear to Hitler that this had gone a little too far, Hitler was the one that pulled the plug on the operation of long knives. But Goering and Himmler, what they literally did, they set Himmler at one end of the table and Goering at the other, and a whole bunch of people from government and the top SS in the other, and they would read out the names that were on these lists, and then Goering had the final say, yes or no. They live or they don't. That's how it physically took place. And sometimes there would be a short conversation if somebody should be spared or not. These were the people that they had perceived as the enemies of their movement over the past 10, 20 years, 10, 12 years. And what to do with Röhm, Hitler was not on, he was not on board with outright having Röhm executed because of their long-term friendship. And you will find a lot of, there's quite a lot of times where Hitler kept his hand over people for a long time, despite the fact that they had messed up horribly or were terrible at their jobs. And you could say the same thing about Goering, because Goering's focus, he was probably not the right person to run the Air Force. There were people that were more competent in the sense of what was needed to build an efficient German Air Force. And I'm still working on exactly what Goering was. He started a lot of industry. Goering set a lot of things in motion. He started a lot of things. He made a lot of money for the party. He got a lot of money for the party. He made the appearance of a big, strong Air Force. And in 38, and 38, 39, when Hitler was ready to go to war, Goering was not at all ready to go to war in Czechoslovakia. And his Air Force wasn't ready. He had all these great air displays of all these 1,000 planes, but they really weren't ready for the British and the French Air Force, although they outmatched them, but they weren't there. And it was also mentioned at one point, I think it was Udet that told Goering, well, when they started talking about the possibility of war with England, Goering said, well, we have all these planes. And Udet said, yeah, but they're the wrong planes. We need long-range bombers. We can't. We can't go to England. We can't stay over England for very long. Because initially Goering had made the ruling that, well, Hitler asks how many planes I have, not what kind they are. And that was looking at people doing a lot of things to impress Hitler by numbers, which does not translate very well to a tactical demand or need or future need. So, and continuing that down into the tail end of the war, where Goering's Air Force was not able to protect German cities, you would think this is time to take that responsibility away from Goering, and Hitler didn't. Hitler held his hands over a lot of people that he shouldn't have. That would, because he had like to have a lot of different people do the same thing, and a lot of infighting, a lot of similar responsibility, dual agencies, which really is no way to run a government, especially not during a war. You want a very streamlined chain of command. And Hitler wasn't very good at making these decisions. Um, and again, when it came to people, and again when it came to Röhm, he really was wavering if he should be shot or not. Yeah, and both Hitler, Goering, and Himmler had to convince him that he had to go. There was no way they could do the whole Night of Long Knives, get rid of so many of William's deputies. They got rid of all these people that they didn't like, have all their former enemies, foreign politicians, police chiefs, people that opposed them in the early years, and then leave William alive. There's just no way this would work. He had to go. But it took them a day and a half to convince Hitler he had to go. And then he was offered, William was offered suicide, and of course he didn't take it, so he was killed in his prison cell. And that's how William went. And the army swore allegiance to Hitler. Now you can then backtrack and say, well, how did this happen? Did Himmler manufacture um, um, did Himmler manufacture the evidence against Röhm? Or did Heydrich? Because Heydrich did a whole lot of things. When it came to the not so gay general later on, in that case, in 38, Blomberg, they manufactured or withheld evidence of that case. That didn't go well at all in the end because there was no evidence. Did they manufacture the evidence on Röhm the years before? They certainly presented a case to Hitler that left him no choice and no doubt that Röhm had to go, but possibly Röhm also did do what they claim he did. And I think it's very possible Röhm was he was probably more of a brutal, straightforward, do what he wanted to do than he was a political animal. And Hitler was very much the political animal, to the point where he said at times he would rein in some people in order to get the political goals he needed. Because you remember in the 30s, Hitler still needed, hey Brian, he still needed the support. He still needed a functioning government to some degree. He still needed the country to work, and for a while replacing a lot of the key positions with his people. He still needed a semblance of normalcy, and there was no room for him because he was upsetting the apple cart literally. But so that's sort of that's sort of where I was going to go with that. But no, Goering is a very interesting place, and the reason why he was initially became addicted to morphine because he was besides the fact that he had been he was sick during World War One, he was shot down during World War One, he was injured during World War One, he was also shot in 23 in the groin, which doesn't sound nice to anyone, and he was it was very interesting at the putsch. Goering was shot in the groin and dragged into a doorway, but then they refused him, and then he was treated by a Jewish couple, a Jewish doctor, that patched him up as much as they could, while Kine got a car and got him over the border to Austria, where he was in a hotel. They had no money. They had everything was confiscated of Goering's. After the putsch, everything they had what the cars they had, everything. And Goering had helped Hitler a lot. He lent him his car because Goering was a well-known pilot. He worked for, I think he flew for Lufthansa already then. And he was somewhat responsible because of his position, social position, and because of his war hero status. He was instrumental in bringing financiers to Hitler, industrialists to Hitler, lent Hitler his convertible. And after the putsch, everything was that it failed. Goering lost everything. The government confiscated everything, and I actually believe the one of the German politicians was actually used his car just to add injury, and he was lingering in a hotel in Austria for quite a while, between life and death, and they weren't sure he was going to make it or not. And from there on, he started using morphine for the pain and became addicted initially to morphine. And this is something that stayed with him. Then they went to from Austria. They went to Italy. He was trying to see Mussolini to get help for Hitler, for the party, to get to do a deal. But Mussolini didn't want to see him. They didn't even tell Mussolini for the longest time that he was there. Well, the party was down, the movement was gone in Germany, Hitler was in jail. Goering really didn't speak from any authority, so everybody ignored him, and they were selling her furs and their furniture and everything they had and everything she had just to survive. And they were living hand to foot, and her mom was sending them a little bit of money here and there. Now remember, Kine was married and had a son, and up in Sweden, and a husband that gracefully gave her a divorce. He was also getting older, and quite graceful about, because she had an affair with Goering for the longest time before they got divorced, a rather public one. So Goering wasn't the most popular one in Sweden knowing about this, but they finally made their way to Sweden, and a lot of drugs in those days had really affected him. He'd become got fatter, heavier, had mental up and down, rages, suicide, the whole thing that comes with drugs. And make no damn mistake about it, drugs is bad, and it's bad for you, and it's bad for your brain. And but as we also know, people who have a drug addiction, you can't really. It's hard to you can't blame them for their actions, but certainly she didn't. But she got him in. Pierre is doing better. I heard from him yesterday. Sorry, just a quick question. I thought he was here. He actually got locked up on what we in America call a 5150. And he was locked up in an insane asylum and threatened to kill everybody, and was a heck of a mess. And well, he got clean, but it was a bit of a journey, and he did a lot of work to try to get those records expunged afterwards, because Mussolini found them, and so did a socialist newspaper after they returned to Germany and Hitler got to power and Goering got his position back in government. The socialist newspaper actually published his medical records that he's been locked up in an insane asylum. Insane asylum because the symptoms of drug use sometimes is everything schizophrenia, and you basically become temporarily insane. Depending on what you're on, and it's a terrible thing to say, and to experience, especially if you ever experience any of your friends with a drug problem. It's something we can talk about later. It was something that's very hard to deal with if they don't, because they don't. If you're a drug addict and you're people on meth or on things, they don't understand they have a problem, and they become schizophrenic, and everything becomes an enemy. They don't act rational, they don't behave rational, and in this country, you cannot just lock them up and force them to rehab, which is probably one of the things that absolutely needs to. You see all these homeless people around this with drug problems. There's no helping them unless you force help on them, and I hate to put it that way, but you can't do that in a free country as here. People have their own right. They're over 18. They can say deny help, but if you are so strung out on drugs, you don't know what you're doing. How do you know what you're saying no to? And that was Goering to some degree, but he was clean from 33, and then there is some ups and downs. Uh, Having his kind die did not help his mental state. And when we know and we hear of, yeah, when we hear of Goering today, we see this flamboyant figure, and he was excessively flamboyant. He was a um, he was a little emperor, um, with ruby rings and playing with diamonds, and this excessive obsession with wealth and excess, which is complete of all proportion, and everybody made fun of him, including himself. He would greet people in silk togas with ruby rings on every finger, and like I said, everyone would make fun of him. He would make fun of him. That was okay. I think he at one point commissioned the funniest joke about himself. Although, depending a little bit, not all jokes he found funny, and you really didn't want to make too much fun of the Hitler's deputy, the ice marshal there, because if you said the wrong joke, well, there was a couple of sailors that made a joke that he didn't find funny, but maybe that wouldn't have worked out well. So, and it's interesting when you, from a psychological point of view, look at what happened to Goering, from being this ambitious flyboy during the, and the reason why he was released as a captain from the Air Force in World War One was after the war. He was only a lieutenant when the war ended. He also didn't get the Pour le Mérite during the fighting. He lobbied for it by explaining to God knows everybody who would listen towards the end of the war, as he saw the end was coming, he didn't have a Pour le Mérite. You always see him wear it ever since. It wasn't given to him because of one sortie, one final heroics. He had to combine all his tallies and everything he did and run up the tree at every high-ranking officer, and he knew people, and that's how he got that. And after the war had ended, he wrote the War Department that if they promoted him to captain, he would refuse his pension. That would save the money. That's how he became a captain. I guess maybe they'll make me a first sergeant if I promise to stop complaining. No, even they know me too well for that, and I don't want to. But that's how he became a captain with the Pour le Mérite. Which, in hindsight, he probably shouldn't have done because they were broke for so many years, and you see the years of being completely deprived and having been sick and destitute and having no money. That has to affect a man. And you can look at Goebbels a little bit the same thing, with from he was 7 when he had this disease with his foot and his leg that grew shorter, his foot that was 3.5 inches shorter because of a childhood disease. He wasn't born a cripple, Goebbels. He became one when he was 7, which can't have been fun. Now you can't play ball. Now you can't do all these things. He was barely 100 pounds. He was a little guy with a lump foot and a big brain. He volunteered for the war, but he couldn't go because, hello. And interesting enough, the women that Goebbels seduced, even when he was broke, was because of his oratory. He was well read. It was he had a charm, a charisma. It was all what he would bring to the table in the above the shoulders department. Because even one of his girlfriends before he became Gauleiter, the first time she saw him from behind, she thought he was a young boy. So it's not that there was a sexual prowess. At least Goering was a war hero. He was a good-looking young man. He was famous, and he had something. He brought something to the table. And then you look at as the war went on, Goering amassed an amazing amount of everything, and beautiful actresses he ended up marrying. I don't have the impression that Goering was spending a lot of time cheating on his second wife, although she must have been really fed up listening to him talking about and calling everything by his first name's wife's name, including having her body brought over from Sweden and buried near the house. You know you're number two, and she knew she was number two. And then the Reich, so she was number three. And Goering thought he was impotent after having been not impotent, but he thought he was sterile. He didn't think he could have children after he was shot in the groin, until she actually announced she was pregnant at a time when Mussolini was visiting. Now he'll talk to him, right? But you look at what happened to these people when they were younger, and when they finally got into power, how they made up for their lacks. And like I said, there's a lot of interesting bones psychiatrists would dig into with these guys, where you could say Himmler probably had the least of these. Goebbels was going to be a priest. He studied religiously. He was a Catholic, and he was supported by a Catholic charity for years. Himmler was a Catholic, and he was very much against. He had a moral code that was against adultery. He missed the war, which was something that he lamented. He was in the army. He was an officer. He was in the officers' academy. Okay, he was an officer cadet, doing machine gun drilling at the time of the end of the war. But he was a week or two away from the front when the war ended. So at least Himmler was some way halfway there. But yes, you're absolutely right. Himmler also had his health problems, but he had a moral code that you can say whatever you will about. But when it came to adultery and women and many things, knowing that he married his wife because she was the first woman he slept with, and he was a young man, had been seduced by an older woman, he still felt obliged he had to marry her, despite everybody warning him against doing so. Goebbels, accordingly, from what we can sort of deduce from his own writings, he didn't have actual sex until he was 33. Now, which was post the time when he was Gauleiter Berlin and had become a rising star and rather famous. So you can see that Goebbels had something to make up for, but he hadn't been rebuffed by women at a younger age. It's very interesting, and it's very strange. It was very hard to break down Goebbels' writings as he was younger, because on one hand, he would write that he came to second base with this woman. Oh, he was doing this and that, and they were kissing, and they spent the night together, but she still remained pure, and she wouldn't let him. And on the other hand, you have letters from the women to Goebbels that they are repudiating him for his own puritanical views, making it a little hard to figure out who turned whom down. Later on, as Goebbels became closer into the war, he started dictating his diary, and it becomes a little more self-serving and rather evident that this is something that he would probably want to have published at some point. Maybe he started writing what he would want people to read, and then he would cross out little things where, like, I don't want to say that, I'll say this instead. Whereas Himmler wrote a diary throughout that he never wanted anybody to read. It wasn't self-serving. He just wrote because that's what his father always taught him. Goebbels initially wrote for himself, but as he was very much focused on his own legacy, which makes it complicated. And it makes it complicated to try to figure out is, did he not? And when we talk from a psychological point of view about a man who doesn't have sex until he's 33, okay, all right, that's got to give you a little bit of baggage. And it certainly seemed that later on that was something for him to make up for by chasing every pretty actress he could, being in a position of power where he certainly could. But he was also married at that time. And Lord knows that was a marriage and a relationship that had problems. There was some arguing, some stuff going on, to the point where I am still a little bit, as Joseph would say, this is just my high octane speculation. I would not put it past him to think that Hitler and Mrs. Goebbels had an affair. And you will now say, what am I basing this on? Uh, Goebbels' wife was infatuated by Hitler. Hitler couldn't marry because he saw his first love or mistress being Germany. So he couldn't possibly marry because he country first. And I think I was younger, and a lot younger and a lot dumber, and I told the girl that no, no, we can't possibly put that we're dating on our Facebook profile because that would just ruin my fan base, which was just as much a horse shit that what Google said, or what Hitler said. Of course, he could have married. And I think Hitler had quite a bit of little flings here and there, but the connection and time spent between Goebbels' wife and Hitler was very, very interesting, I think, because she was picked up after Magda. Read about the speculation. I'm Andreas. I'm guessing I'm not the only one who thought this because the day after, or sometime after, I don't have the dates and time right with me, but it seems to me that Goebbels was dating Magda, and she had a son, and son went up to Hitler, and there was something, and then soon he was impressed with the young boy, came down to the bar, and um, met her the first time, and Hitler seems to have expressed that she reminded him very much of Gayle Rauber, who had killed herself some years before, who was a great devastating moment for Hitler when he lost his niece. And I do actually think she killed herself. Um, I certainly don't think Hitler killed her. Put it that way. He was on a train somewhere when he was told, and that was one of the devastating moments in Hitler's personal life. We all have trauma. Life happens, and so did they. And he saw she reminded him of her. And after they had met, one of Hitler's aide picked her up and took her to a function. The only way Hitler could be around Magda so often was if she married Goebbels, and then he would have a reason to, and it wasn't seen inappropriate. And that's sort of what his aide explained to her after in a car. Drove her to a function and said, "Well, the Führer really likes you and want to have be around you, but he can't marry you." And she understood, and she married Goebbels. And it seems she married Goebbels so she could spend time with the Führer. And I don't know, but that sounds like making an affair to me. But it also seems something that when Goebbels early year long, he was deeply in love with a young woman. Who's her name? Alexandra, Alex. Doesn't matter what her name is right now. Madly in love with her for a while, and she cheated on him. Well, she didn't cheat on him because they weren't really together. But she had sex with one of his friends, and he forgave her right off. Which says, okay, so he wasn't jealous in that sense, which is something that, if we're in love with a woman and she sleeps with one of our friends, we may be at least a little annoyed, somewhat. But that wasn't the case in his earlier life. So for him to share her, Magda, with Hitler, somebody he absolutely idealized, and the three of them would spend a lot of time together, especially in the earlier days. I'm not entirely sure that. I don't know. I would not have been surprised if some of her children were actually Hitler's. Uh, I don't know if there's any documentation really backing that up. It is just what I get from reading Goebbels' diaries, Hitler's diaries, those around them. Um, it just seems that way, and it just comes out that way. But also, what I was going at, you have a lot of people in charge who have baggage in that sense, uh, and certainly, and it's not necessarily strange for people to. Okay, it's a little in this day and age. It's strange for somebody to be 33 and not having had sex. That's just that in the Western world that is weird, and in I guess in the not Western world they marry a lot younger. So, uh, but it is, shall we say, an anomaly. Back in the day, a lot of people they wouldn't have sex until they got married, and if they're saving themselves from marriage, such as what Himmler did, it was not an uncommon belief at the time. And remember, we have to look at history through their eyes, not our eyes. Um, but it must still have done something if that really was the case. And also, a lot of the women that Goebbels was with, short of all the cute actresses, were the ones he was really in love with, and like Magda, they were all a little older, and it almost seems that there's some sort of a motherly uh, bent to some of his relationships. And you could have said the same thing about Himmler, since he married somebody that was older. But I don't think he looked at her in that light. I think she was literally seduced him because he was a good option, and he was young, and he was there, and then he married her because, well, that's what he thought was the right thing to do. And uh, I guess I feel a little sorry for him there. Not enough reason to start World War II sorry, but you know. And then he had an affair with the secretary with whom he had two kids. But you can't really, well, you know, who in the corporate world today haven't had an affair with secretary except apparently me. But I did have a very cute assistant when I had money, and she became a princess for Disney. Anyway, so there. Wow, yeah. There's some interesting people, and it will be an interesting. It's an interest. That's why I think that's why World War II is so interesting. Is because you have some interesting people with some interesting baggage that have either completely corrupted and destroyed some of the players' characters, or most certainly built it. Remember, what's it called? Churchill had an interesting life, and was also broke off his ass before World War II and had to borrow money. He almost put his house for sale, Cartwell House. So, and became a raving alcoholic. The Canadian Prime Minister take advice from his dead dog. Uh, I'm not a big FDR fan. I'm really not. But and then you had Stalin, who was a thug and a kidnapper. It was just a time where I think that's one of the reasons why World War II is so interesting, is because so many non-vanilla people were in power. So, Goebbels' wife, she was. It's funny when you read through his diary. Um, there's one point where he actually, in public, in view of a few SS men, the bodyguards, took stranglehold of her, and threatened her, and choked her on their boat for something she said. Which and he was an absolute a-hole to their children, very, very, very sarcastic. Uh, Goebbels was not a nice person. He was an ass. He as he got in power. However, he was also very, very, very troubled with and emotional, and he would run out to his cabin and spend days drinking and crying, and wondering what to do about the actress he was in love with, if he should leave his wife, and she said this, and it's all over, and then he missed his wife, and again, well, she's probably bigger than he was. So what is show and what isn't, because you read his early years, you almost feel sorry for him because he's this pathetic creature as he's young. Also because he has a reason to be. He's broke. He has a lump foot. He barely weighs 100 pounds. His parents almost gave up on him. He's trying to find his way in life. The women he loves not accept. Their parents wouldn't accept him. I mean, you can feel sorry for some of these people. You can feel sorry for Goering and his early upbringings. He didn't have an easy upbringing either. But then again, if you then extrapolate that to how many people in the 1900s, 10s, 1920s, 1930s, who had an easy life, who had an easy upbringing, who had a good, stable family life. And yet people overcame and moved on and did what they did, and some did more with it. But you can read the individual stories of these people, as you, I'm sure, could read individual stories of people who never wrote their stories, who will never be known or heard from in history. But certainly what people went through as they grew up 100 years ago are things that I don't think people today that young people today would ever survive. There was more, there more backbone to people back then, and it gives out more interesting stories because it has the lives of these people had such a great effect on world history. And I think that's what makes them interesting. But it also makes it really important to remember exactly who they were and what they did. And you can't really start writing into them what your assessments of today is. And I think that's a big problem we have in the historical narrative of world history, of American history, of European history, of German history, is that you cannot look with the sentiments of today, which is strange because the sentiments of today have markedly changed from the sentiments of 10 years ago to the point where we are looking 10 years ago, and now we think, oh, well, nothing we did 10 years ago was acceptable to say or do. But if we look 100 years ago, well, certainly nothing was acceptable to say or do. But you can't judge people based on that, because you have to look at the time. You have to look at these people's lives at the time. And so, well, this was normal then. Is slavery okay? No, slavery is not okay. It's not okay now. It wasn't okay 100 years ago, 150 years ago. No, but it was part of the, to some, it was acceptable. It was part of the economy. 200 years ago, sure. It was a different world, and the world have evolved. But we still have to judge people of history through the lives of the time. And that's something we really need to start remembering. Anyway, I'm working. So anything you guys want to talk about, this will be the time, because well, why not? Oh, this is fun. I'll totally blame my lack of coffee yesterday on. It was a very nice lady from the archives I talked to yesterday. She really gave me a lot of good advice on how and where to look, which will also eventually bring us to how many grandkids of all the Nazis are still, well, how many grandkids of the old Nazis still important positions nowadays without people know? Well, yes, but what else are they going? Are they in that position today because of the position that their grandparents were in, or are they because they're smart people? Lord knows, if I was as smart and driven as my granddad, I wouldn't be here. I might be. I would probably be running my corporation still. My granddad was an incredibly smart man, but I chose a different direction just because somebody's grandparents were I don't know, what's Alan Dulles' parents doing. But you look at these political families today. Well, what do their grandparents do, and what do their great grandparents do? And that's one of the things that is the, like I said, I don't like to talk current day politics, but the problem with the system is it is inherently hard for unknown people to end up in charge because they don't have the resources or the money or the name or the clout or the connections that you need in order to run for politics anywhere. And you have these political families. Yeah, I hate this chair, but honestly, lady, this chair is nicer than the chair I have at home. And I hate that word. Uh, oh God, I'm still waiting for Valkyrie to come pick me up to Aldebaran. When am I back in Germany next? In late May. In late May. Who will win in Ukraine? Honestly, nobody. The people who will benefit from the Ukrainian crisis, as I see it, based on what I know, is not anybody who's anywhere near Ukraine. Possibly some people in there. There are people in other countries that will benefit more from this than the Ukrainians or the Russians will. It will end in some sort of a stalemate, and then it will eventually draw out and go away and turn into something else. I don't think there's a Russian long-term benefit from this. I think eventually the Ukraine will have its country back, and the Russians will eventually go away from this, and certain things will return to business as usual. All right, Brian, V3, you say. I have been finally gotten the reports of the heavy crossbow sites, as the V3 sites were listed in France. The big bundle, the V3, the cannon, the cupola, the cupola, and the blockhouse. And there's another site as well for manufacturing. And there's some really strange stuff. There's some things from the report and from the physical remains that does not make sense to me. There really is something off about that side. And we just got Paul Beatty was helping a heck of a lot, and I owe him because for some reason the British Archives would respond to him and not to me. Well, they would, but I couldn't book it from here for some strange reason. But we got the documents, we got the files from 45 and 49, and I'm going through those, and there's going to be some really interesting episodes coming from there. That's going to raise a few questions, I will say. And yes, there was. Kamala's son was the mayor, Rommel's mayor. And I know Winterfeld, one of the generals that was part of the assassination plot. He lives a couple of kilometers away. We did a couple of movies together. He was part of that whole thing, and I think his grandfather was one of the people killed. So I mean, there's a lot of people that was part of this that whose relatives had. I'm trying to see how I can phrase this in the right way without. This is where I don't want to offend anybody because I don't want to offend anyone. There are just certain people, and that instill in their families more of a drive and ambition than others. And if you were high ranking in the Reich then, or in Austria, Russia, or in America, Britain, you were probably in one of the families that had a high expectation of success. And therefore, it's quite possible that you would instill the same in your children and they're in theirs. And that's why they're successful today, because there's like this, and that's just a fact. People are just different, and people raise their kids different. And if you're successful, then probably your kids and grandkids are today. And some of them I know. Some of them I know quite well, and I would vote for today, even though their parents did terrible, or grandparents did bad things during the war, I would vote for them today because they don't have bad sentiments and they're not bad people. And I'm not going to judge anybody today based on the sins of their fathers or grandfathers, great grandfathers, because that's not fair. And as you can see today, and I think that's an important part in that. If you look at what happened when Donald Trump was president, where there were certain young people that refused their parents to see their grandchildren if they had voted for Trump. Well, that of all things in the world should, first of all, let politics come between family members is insane and undignified and a terrible, stupid thing to do. However, it clearly shows you that like father, not like son. Just because your parents have one opinion certainly does not mean that your children and certainly not your grandchildren share those sentiments at all. Sometimes they are completely opposed and not even compatible. And Lord knows, I think it's terrible when something as asinine as politics, which is pretty much a creation, will come between families, or that's just sad. Yes, tons of World War I trips on the next trip. Well, that's not right. World War I sites. Yes, Andreas, I'm going to be a lot more. I'm not done with World War I yet. Just putting World War I together while I'm working on getting the research in for the Bergkristall and for the V3 sites. We're going to do a little World War I because World War I is actually a lot of fun, and it's fun for me too. Okay, it's all fun for me, but it's not all fun to edit because a lot of it takes a crap ton of research. And World War I is fun because sometimes I sit and see things that I was too busy filming to notice, and then I'll see them when I edit them. So that's cool. As far as I know, Ed, my friends in the Ukraine are okay. Who pays for the damage? What damage? What damage? If it's the damage to the Ukraine, well, the Russians are not going to pay. Win, lose, or draw, they're not paying. So we are. We are going to send in a bunch of businesses, and they're going to pay for it. And those are probably the ones who are going to win. The ones who may do that. I'm a little dubious as to who actually may end up benefiting from this. Maybe it's a test of content. Maybe it is, and maybe something good will come of it. Maybe it'll wake up people who's been living in flying unicorn land world. But connection between Hitler retiring and then Frank, what? You may want to just proofread that and tell me what you're. There's a couple of letters in there, and maybe they're in the wrong order. Be more specific. I disagree. Are you guys talking to yourselves, or what are you talking to me? People back then were talking. Yeah. Breakaway calling anyway. I'm not entirely sure I am buying into the concept that there was a will. Just saying. I'm just saying that it was a good book, but I'm not actually saying that it was anything else yet. Gone Wrong Doll. What a cool name. Gone Wrong Doll. It sounded like anybody I could have dated in my life. Oh, cool name. Cool name for that should be a band. Gone Wrong Doll. I'm saying you should be a band. I don't really say. The British Archive. English word of the British Archive is I just couldn't get to. I could get to it. I could find what I was looking for. I just couldn't click the button and say order these. It just wouldn't let me. So I had to get Paul to do it from England. Let's see. The truth of the Fourth Reich in South America. Well, there's certainly a truth to a heck of a lot from the Third Reich that end up living in South America and have their enclaves. And there was German colonies in these places from before the war ended. So, but for them to actually try to start a Fourth Reich, If I was going to suggest a Fourth Reich, I would follow the money and the politics and see where the money went and where the politics went. Certainly, some of the funding went to banks in South America, but some of the people who went there to hide. But where did the really power and the money really go? I don't think it left Europe. And we can always answer, well, what are all these strange people in Switzerland doing? Delighted to see you on call uploading again. Food fan of the family. Yep. Bear in mind, ideologies do get passed down. Ideologies can, but certainly it is not. It is not a definite. You can't say that all grandparents they believe what their grandchildren now believe. Well, might to some degree be unfortunate because sometimes their grandparents had a heck of a lot more common sense than this generation, just because they wanted to kill half the world. That's a whole. That gets us into to modern day weirdness, which is modern day is pretty damn weird. It's the way money. Yes, Cameron, you're right. The Nazis most certainly hid money. The smart ones and the ones who had the ability definitely hid assets away for the end of the war. And a lot of the German businesses did too. And a lot of them are still in business today because of it and the dealings they did through Switzerland, hiding the money, hiding the assets, hiding the companies, shell companies, bankruptcies, and they're back in business some years after the war. Absolutely. Businesses survived. And I guess thus Kent Joel some parents. No, I actually think that's a book as well. Slavery was not about hate. It was about cheap labor. You're right. It was. It was just a terrible. It was just a terrible thing. But it was about money. I think the CIA is protecting war criminals working for the CIA to fight the communists in South America. Well, yes, of course they were. Yes, they did. And CIA, love you. Hi. You know what? At that point, World War II has ended, and we took their bad guys to fight the new bad guys. I can live with it. I'm not saying it was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. It was just the thing. Who are you gonna fight everybody after the war is over? At some point in time, you have to make decisions. Decisions were made. I can accept those decisions that they made, and that's why I'm not blaming him for them. I'd just like to know how similar is the V3 to the Iran supergun. I'll know when I come out with the episode, because I'm still looking at. One thing I can tell you is that the V3 gun site in France, what the Allies captured was a lot of dummy grenades that weren't properly calibrated, that wasn't properly balanced. They were show dummies, not the actual projectiles that were to be used. And they tried to fire them, and that didn't work, and that's why they said it didn't work. I do think it did work, or it would have worked, although it was coming towards the end of the war before they made it work. And I'm not entirely sure that the way we have been explained that it worked was the way it actually did. But I will know more when I've gone through all the papers that I fortunately have. And then if that's the case, then the Iran one is probably of a similar design that probably also would have worked, because Saddam had 50 years and German scientists per notes probably to make his work. So, but I will know more when I get to it. Sonic blasters were banned in Star Trek. You know what? I don't. I'm sure I'm gonna make somebody cry, but I don't remember the last time I saw Star Trek. Anyway, Austria is still uncomfortable. Yes, they are uncomfortable. Oh, yes, they are very uncomfortable about World War II. Didn't happen. We weren't here. The Germans did it. We were all on holiday, is what I usually get from them. Yes, we were not there. We didn't do it. And then again, like, I don't care. I don't even question any of the war crime stuff. I don't deal in that part of history. I want to know about technology. So, what else? Is there anything that worked with the CIA? Yeah, that I tend to believe that when things go bump in the night, some intelligence agency is usually involved in it. I just don't, and sometimes they do it for. I love it when they say we did it for the greater benefit of our country. But but when they do it without any oversight, although the Muppets in charge right now probably shouldn't oversee anything because that makes it worse. So honestly, we're kind of screwed. We're all going to die, just not going to be today or tomorrow, I promise. But the moment that Bill Gates start making me vegetable burgers only, that's the end of the line. Anyway, sorry, one. Yep. Don't ask how I got kicked out of home. Okay, I will not ask you how I got kicked out of home, but if your wife is mad at me, have her give me a call. I'll put her online right after the CIA's call. Yep. RS, okay. I hope so. Lord knows, I hope they do. I hope there are aliens up there, and I hope they come visit. I would love to have something really interesting happen in my lifetime, even if it probably will result in me having to fight for my life against some strange species. If there's aliens that land on this planet, I'm not sure if they're going to come to help because, well, they would be a lot more technical advanced than us. And if they were to come all the way here, lady, you're leaving. I'm sorry, darling. I did not know that you were still feeling bad. Do you need any zinc? We have some great zinc and C vitamin here. Let me know. Shoot me an email if you need anything. One thing we do in America better than anybody else is over-the-counter pharmaceuticals. That and vitamins and supplements and all that stuff. I missed the part where you said you were sick, but let me know if you need anything from here. There's a lot of pros. Yeah, research. I still got to read it. I still have to read it, and I still get it from the archive, and I still have to find out what's what. I remember World War One veterans. I wish we had documented more of those guys. Old teacher still looking for years missing soldiers. Thank you. We talked about that. We did talk about that. I'll tell you what, Chris. When you say Germans will return, Germans have an exceptional amount of problems in Germany right now. They have done a phenomenal job in messing up their own country. And I'm even from my German friends out there, I'm not entirely sure that they can actually recover from. It will take them a long time to recover if they find people who can actually get back on a common sense track of governance. And they can only hope for aliens to actually land and help them out, because at this point in time, I don't know if we have enough in common to have a common sense. NSA, would the National Security Agency have the information you want? Possibly. NSA, I don't know why NSA would have World War II files. They're more of a modern, new agency, so I don't exactly know if the NSA would. I mean, NSA probably knows something about everybody. But if a lot of the files I'm looking for are probably sitting in boxes somewhere. Well, what could have happened to them? What could have happened to the files is these records were taken of German technology. It was brought over here and distributed to American industries and businesses in order for them to continue working on stuff, or developing it, or figuring out how it worked, or build it. That's probably what happened to it. However, if it was gathered by the OSS, or that then turned over, some of that was turned over to the archive, some of it was turned over to the CIA, some of it was burned outright, or some of it was just cataloged in ways and filed in boxes that no one has any idea where are. I think there's a fairly large chance that a lot of this documentation is sitting somewhere in a box that nobody knows what it is, because it wasn't labeled as. They're not going to find it in the heading Beckstein. Maybe they called it something else. There wasn't a uniform filing system. That's a problem. which means a lot of time going through boxes. And there is a special place where all files that haven't been gone through has gone. Problem is, nobody knows it's classified or not, and there's no funding behind it. But there is such a site. I have the name of it. We're not entirely sure where it is, but I could find out. But we're not going to be let in because you need a classification, you need have oversight, you need money, and so there still are boxes. That was confirmed to me that no one has gone through. That has just ended up there because they had nowhere else to go. Heavy crossbow sites, or the British designation for the vengeance weapon sites in France, when they marked them for being bombed. That was the code name for that, heavy crossbow sites. Where to go? What not sure, retirement village, nothing. Nothing exactly. Yes, that's it. Tropical ski resort. Yes, good one. Like it. But not just the missiles, also the V3 gun and but yes. Maybe some of it rerouted to out of the country and then get out of Europe and then came back. Yeah. Yes. A lot of people from that time just came here outside of the system and has been hiding quietly. Several thousand of them that was living in Canada after the war and forever, because there was a law passed in the States where some had lobbied to get them kicked out or arrested. So a lot of them moved to Canada in 58, 64, I can't remember. I'm just reading any of the question, if there's anything that comes up here with a question mark. Common says, yes, that's a problem. Common sense only denotes we have anything in common. And we are now so deliberately divided and misguided that I'm not entirely sure we have much in common. So we can go back to history and say, well, at least I understand this part. Gotta go take guest on. I'm going to in a little bit, so I can get back to actually working on whatever it is I'm working on for you guys. We're gonna have something to do next week, and it's already 12 o'clock. Don't know why my counter says we've only been doing this for an hour and a half. It feels like we've been doing this for more than an hour and a half. I do not understand. Can you give hi CIA? Hi, tell me. It's my CIA love call. Hi. Just making it long, I believe. I can't remember the Iraq gun. There's something to actually that'll be interesting to look into. Somebody around must have seen it. Yeah, Felix, there's a lot more coming on that. I just wanted you to see the impact sites before we actually get to it. Kamala and Galen, well, individually or together, they certainly made a deal. Phone is dead. Toodles, Andrew. Thank you. See you soon. Voltron Mama, all right. Bloody hell. I'm so far behind in the chat that when you're oh my godding me, catching up what you guys have been doing. I don't know what you're responding. I got to do this real time. Shoot. Dark Legacy. Sounds like a video game. Any newly? No. Nothing new on the discovered tunnels in Poland. I talked to Alex, and I guess we're going to have to go chase these people down when I come out there. Again, problem with historians, everybody want to hide everything. Nobody wants to share. And I just sent 3,000 files to Audi in Austria because I don't want to sit on stuff, especially stuff that I can't always have time to read in a timely manner. So I want everybody to just just share, because it's the only way we get things done. Why are people sitting on files that they? And that's why I get a lot of the things I got, because there's other historians that want to share, and I think, and that is absolutely awesome. Um, Cameron, you keep talking to them, you keep these guys entertained. They need to know that they're not forgotten. Um, they want to scuff the restart of the nuclear plants in Germany. Yes, they won't talk about nuclear power in Germany, despite that is the one thing that might actually fix some of the problems. So let's buy gasoline from France instead, or we'll buy it from Iran or some other state that'll matter. Anyway, did I shoot on the? Did I get to shoot on the front? No, not a little bit. No, I haven't. I haven't. Since you saw that, I haven't been out there yet. But I'll get to play with a label once. I really want to fire a needle gun at some point in time. I really want to fire a needle gun. I don't know why. I just really want to. Anti-gravity. If we had anti-gravity, all the light-headed people would just float away. Yeah, we'll go all the way you can. Well, it's very interesting what may come of it. I saw that about your old teacher. Keep trying. There's a couple of people I have to get back to before I travel as well. Yes, Roger will be with us next week. Mark, yeah. All right, fine. Yes. Anyway, I figure we're gonna throw up Thursday. We're gonna do Wednesday, Thursday. I'm fitting off another World War One forts right now, and then probably Friday or Saturday, Roger will come on, and I'll let you guys remind you so you can all send questions to both of us. And Roger will be here, absolutely. And with a little luck, I should at least have done the introductory episode, Last Night's a Secret, to the Berchtesgaden Tunnel, and then what's going on out there before I start breaking it down. Because when I start breaking it down from both sides' point of view, it's going to be quite a few episodes. Going to have to be. But I'm going to get started on what I know now. I like Nazi bankers. In the sense that I wish I had one with some stuff available. Yeah, there's stuff that we're going to be doing this week. Speaking of children of former officers of the Reich, that we will be doing this year. That I'm not going to tell you until we find what we're looking for. Discuss. Yes. Well, the sad thing about discussing heavy German guns from World War One and World War Two is there's so damn few of them left. But I hope to be actually able to find some of them, and there's a couple of like one sitting up in Norway that I really want to see, and there's a couple that was used after the war that I'm going to show you. But we will get to all that in time. No, not time for a cigar for another 6-7 hours because I am at work, as you can tell from the clearly dull and drab background behind me here. However, well, Packers, if they won't let you shoot guns in the UK, you come on over here to America because see we can still go play with them readily. And on that lovely note, I feel I am getting hoarse and I'm out of this horrible dark liquid that is now warm. You went to the firing site of the Paris gun. I'm guessing, Andreas, there's nothing left of it. I know they blew it up before they left, so I guess there's nothing left there, is there, Andreas? I'm guessing. You have an NRA in the UK too. Good. They're not doing good. Simon, how are we doing on translations and stuff, by the way? Yeah, but you have to go to a range to shoot guns in the UK. Here we can just go out on the range behind the house. Oh, sorry, well, we're not behind the house. I'll probably wake up the homeless people. As Joseph is rehabilitating, training from working out from what I can from tell. He sounds like he's doing okay. The concrete still there. Yeah, it's too bad that's not the foundation was an experimental foundation. Oh well, you saw the last episode, so you know what I'm going to say. There's the experimental foundation made by Krupp, built for the one in Verdun. But yeah, it's too bad. There's a lot of the V2 mobile firing sites. There's nothing but a slab of concrete, done. Um, which is there's all these places, and then there you go into a forest, and then there's a flat slab. There you go, done. Um, so there's a lot of sites that are nothing much left of. However, there's some other sites we will take more of a look at. Anyway, now I'm feeling horsey, not like spare horsey. I got to play with horsey, and first horsey I got to play with in my cavalry unit. I was very happy. Hang on, that's an actual question. What have you been reading lately as far as World War II is concerned? I'm reading a book on Hermann Goering, planning on his profile coming up. I honestly I don't have time to read much lately because I'm busy writing, and we had a film in post that needs some attention, and I'm just overworked right now. Stuff that no one can really do other than me. Oh, thank you, brother. Good. But if you can send me the German text, if you had the German text written out, you can send me that. Because there's a certain Herr Kammler that would like to read it. Just saying. And he has something else that's bigger that I'll tell you about when I see you. Anyway, leave it there. All right. So, we can't own fully auto here either. When you help me with the bomb factory video, we will go to the yes. Oh yeah. Now that ammo is down in price, we can actually go shoot again. That's good. It's the book David Irving wrote on Hermann Goering, which is an excellent book, and I think it's just called Goering. I don't remember if it has a name. Jacket goes to hell and goes in my gym bag. No one sent me any. Oh, I thought we got it translated into plain German text to begin with. Anyway, never mind. All right, you guys. Nothing like it. Freedom seats. Oh, you're funny. All right, I am going to make lunch because it is now late. And I'll see you guys, and I will talk to you soon. And actually, I guess I'll talk to you on Friday, Saturday with Roger, and see if I can actually make my own premiere this week. We gotta get. Do remember to share and spread the love, and we'll see if we can get some more YouTubers on here. I actually did write the lady that's the CEO of YouTube with a suggestion of how to make things better. And we'll see if she responds. I'm pretty sure she's a busy lady, but I had an idea. We'll see how that goes. Without coffee, I've just been more productive. I don't know how the hell that happened. But anyway, you guys have a great day. Have a good Sunday, which is coming up sooner than later. Go eat something unhealthy and be well. Remember what I said. You're not going to die this week.